All right, guys, welcome back. This is the third segment on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you have not checked out the first two segments on Podbean or iHeartRadio, Podbean being the preferable source, check it out. Talked in the first segment about the Republican National Convention, which is wrapping up tonight. And it's amazing the coalescing that's happening with people. You have tech billionaires like Elon Musk, Hulk Hogan, who's ripping off his shirt like a madman, Russell Brand, who recently came to Jesus. Unbelievable people that are they're coming together right now, which is awesome. I talked about that in the second segment. I talked about, well, according to Newsmax, Mark Halperin, old Joe is going to be bowing out most likely this weekend, at the very latest, I guess Monday. And we talked about who's going to fill the massive shoes that Joe is going to be leaving. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. So check it out. And I think if you just go to Podbean, you can put in my name. It should show up. I'm also going to put a link on Facebook as well. So without further ado, what are we going to talk about in this last segment? Well, first, we're going to talk about why I think J.D. Vance is a solid pick to be VP Vice President. Let me just say one thing, guys. If you still are listening to the legacy media and like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, just turn it off. I mean, turn off that garbage because they're going to castigate and vilify JD. They're going to talk about how JD hated President Trump. How could he be on his ticket? He's going to undermine. Again, their whole objective is to try to, because look, at the end of the day, the people who can't stand President Trump are not going to probably change right now. There are people coming in, but there are more people who are just misinformed. The people who can't stand President Trump and who can't stand conservatives, the MAGA movement, they're not trying to appeal to. They're trying to appeal to kind of people who are kind of engaged or people who may be supporting President Trump or J.D. Vance. Look, don't fall into the trap because that is the tactic they use because they can't separate. And Rush would say this, and this was absolutely accurate. Digressing a little bit, but I have to, when something pops into my mind related to Rush Limbaugh, I just got to say it. Rush would say, this is true, they cannot, the media, legacy media, leftist, progressives, Democrats cannot separate Trump supporters from Trump. So again, don't engage with the lies they're going to foment about J.D. Vance because it is coming. All right, let's get that out of the way. So why do I think J.D. Vance is a solid pick? Well, let's talk about his background, okay? First of all, he has apparently a cemetery plot in eastern Kentucky. So if he's a Kentucky dude, I gotta give him support. I gotta show him some love. Anyway, so he apparently, okay, his story, he wrote a story about his life called The Hillbilly Elegy, which Ron Howard, who, if you don't know Ron Howard, he played Opie on the Andy Griffith Show. And he's actually a leftist, a very liberal dude, Democrat liberal. And he made a movie about his life on Netflix, which is crazy. I haven't seen it yet, but apparently, I think it's a pretty good production. If Ron Howard did it, it's got some clout. So he's got some popularity there. And also, he is one of the most intelligent people, according to Ben Shapiro, in DC, which says a lot because Shapiro is like a savant himself. So what is his background? And I think it's an impressive pedigree. And this is where we'll start, which you can't beat his pedigree. He's only 39, but he was in the Marine Corps, served in Iraq. He went to Ohio State University, then he went to Yale Law School. So he's got solid education, and then he became a successful businessman, has 3 kids, married. So he's got the total package. At least that's what it appears. So I think President Trump vetted well. I think he, obviously deliberated, and I think he chose a solid pick. But what I think is going to be, and what ultimately I think why President Trump picked him, because usually you pick a VP because you think the VP is going to help you win certain states. And I think JD will help President Trump in kind of the Rust Belt states, known as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, which are, important states to win. But I think President Trump is going to absolutely dominate those states anyway. What I think he was looking for more than anything else is someone who's going to carry the blueprint of America first. And Vance has shown that, man. He's going to secure the border. He obviously served in the military, so he's got military prowess and intelligence. He is not going to get us involved into foreign entanglements. He's been very dubious about sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, just causing more death and more entanglement. And, and also you see someone who I think has shown a willingness to engage and combat the narrative that is fomented by the mainstream press, by the legacy media, He's willing to engage. He's willing, and that, guys, that's what you have to have. I on my last podcast, one of my last podcasts, I talked about whoever follows President Trump. I said this actually before the assassination attempt. I said this: someone has to be willing to lay down their life for their country. And I think someone who serves, who's a serviceman, such as J.D. Vance, demonstrated that he was willing to lay down his life in service for his nation, which I think is a, you don't have to serve in the military. That's a prerequisite. You have to be willing to do that, which President Trump illustrated last weekend. And so you have someone who's going to be committed to resist this perceived status quo. And President Trump has laid out that blueprint. Someone that just because the legacy media, you have the establishment, the ruling classes, you have to embrace this type of doctrine. You have to be engaged in endless wars. You have to embrace these sort of crazy ideologies. You can actually stand against that and be resolute and still gain momentum and popularity and support, grassroots support. And President Trump has shown that. And I think he was, look, you can talk a big game, you can try to present yourself as conservative, America first, but proof's in the pudding. And I think J.D. Vance showed him enough. And I think is just someone who is going to be so articulate, because as a VP, you want to be able to articulate the commander-in-chief's, whether it's his philosophy, his ideology, his platform, his policy platform. You want someone who can do that exquisitely. And I think J.D. Vance will do that phenomenally well. So overall, guys, I'm pleased. And as I said, just turn off the chatter when you hear a lot of negative narratives about him. I'm going to end with one more thought. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but this is just a thought I want to share because I think it's very important. It has to do with the President Trump assassination attempt. Guys, let me just say this right now very clear, and this is important to understand. You're going to see the mainstream press, the legacy media, when they put out, for example, 10 conspiracy theories that have been debunked, they are lying to you. And I know I've said this before, maybe not on a video, so if you're just watching the videos, let me say this, and I'll repeat myself ad nauseum because this is super important. Excuse me. Back when JFK was assassinated in the 60s, the CIA created the term conspiracy theory. That's true. They did that. Why? Because they did not want anyone to question the prevailing narrative that JFK wasn't assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald on the grassy knoll, a lone gunman. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but if you're someone who's logical and rational, you know that's just flat out not true. That did not happen, actually. Okay, the Jack Ruby assassination, all that stuff, man. It's just, again, not true. So, with what happened with President Trump, and I'll say this, when you have people telling you, and again, at the very least, let me just say, it's the very least, what happened, what we saw with the Secret Service, local law enforcement, there's a lot of pointing fingers right now. They're gonna have to flesh things out. So again, a little early to begin just making definitive statements, but I'll say this. If you're hearing people tell you that it was only negligence, that's it, that's where all the evidence points, like gross negligence or gross incompetence, yeah, that's the very least. When you see things, a preponderance of evidence, if it's one thing, if it's just one thing, if it was, okay, law enforcement just saw the shooter an hour, which happened an hour before the shooting took place on the roof. It was just one thing, although that right there, it's one thing. Guys, there have been evidence after evidence after evidence that suggest this was a conspiracy. This was coordinated. And again, I can't prove that factually right now. I'm not saying that, but if you're an investigator and you're looking at this objectively, you're not going to rule that out. And you're going to, like, honestly, there's enough stuff here. You have to begin considering something else. So I submit to you, because this is important, guys. And it's not just about this story. This is a microcosm of mind indoctrination, where they will put out headlines that completely indoctrinate and will persuade you before you actually even engage with news stories, guys. And there are so many things. I just mentioned that law enforcement saw the shooter up there an hour before the shooting. okay? Literally, a cop did. You have bystanders, and I'm just mentioning, I'm not going to do a whole podcast right now on this or even a segment, but I do feel like I wanted to mention a few things because it's just bothering me. I'll probably really flesh it out more in a different podcast. But you have bystanders who see this guy on the roof. You have him doing reconnaissance, days, maybe a week before he was actually there. Guys, there's too many things to just say, nah, turning it off. So if anything, guys, I'm beckoning you and encouraging you. The most important thing is, and I said this in my first segment about why people are coming to the MAGA movement, people that you never would think of, Amber Rose, for example. You can look her up and look up her speech. They're tired of being lied to. And that is what's happening right now. You're seeing a galvanizing effect with people. And it doesn't matter, guys. It's apolitical. And Tucker said, it's like, you know what? I'm beginning to see that it's not really right versus left, Republican versus Democrat. The battle is people who are lying and people who are telling the truth. And the term conspiracy theory has a stigma that the CIA knew what they were doing when they created that term. They knew exactly what they were doing. It's to indoctrinate and persuade and to create a narrative so it doesn't matter whatever you hear. Doesn't matter what the evidence is. Because when you hear conspiracy theory, you immediately think of crazy people talking about aliens, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, which if you haven't watched my Aliens podcast with my brother Benj, check that out because we kind of talk about that a little bit. But that is what happens. So again, think about this, be open to the idea that what you're hearing right now, specifically with the assassination attempt, is not what they are saying. And you have to ask yourself why. Why? Why are they intentionally trying to tell you that anyone who questions a narrative is a conspiracy theorist? There's a reason for that, guys. And don't have enough time to break down all the stuff, but I just want you to understand there's a lot of stuff going on here. Let me just mention a few things to look at. Just the News with John Solomon does a great job. He is an objective dude. He looks at the issues. He will give you, he's just a reliable source. Okay, the Epoch Times, I think, is really good as well. You have resources to go to, all right? And utilize that because when you're looking at stuff online, the Washington Post, the New York Times, I even saw something from the Wall Street Journal today. You have, in the legacy media, I've already mentioned that. Be careful, be open, and be shrewd because there is an informational war right now. People are waking up. I think that's it, man. I think that's all I got. Oh, one more thing. Oh, I forgot. One more thing about J.D. Vance. This is really good. I'll end with this. Tucker said, because he's been in D.C. for a long time, he's not there anymore, but he knows a lot of the people in D.C. He said, basically, every person in D.C. that I don't trust, I'm kind of paraphrasing, every person in D.C. that I don't trust hate J.D. Vance. And again, on both sides of the aisle, because you have many phony Republicans who masquerade as, American first. It's pitiful, it's sad. So that's a good thing. When you have most people, who are shady characters, hate a person and don't want them to be in a position of influence and power, it's a good thing. Good litmus test right there. Now I'm done. All right, guys, have a good weekend, and I will be back soon. So I don't know when that's going to be. Impromptu, maybe. Sometimes you got to go impromptu. All right, have a good weekend. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.